Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for clicking on. It really means a lot to me. I am Peter the Book Lover. I have a YouTube channel to where I talk about books and movies. I have a great time doing it, and hopefully you'll have a good time as well. In this video, I'm going to talk about my monthly wrap-up of October of 2025. Plus, I'm going to go 5 days into November 25 because I'm starting a challenge. Well, I already started it on November 5th. So I might as well just add those 5 days to this monthly wrap-up. And I read quite a bit of good books. So I had a great time reading them. And I think they're pretty interesting. Hopefully you'll have a good time as well. But before I get into the books, I want to thank everybody for being here. If you like the video, please hit the like button. Let me know that you like the video. It would really help me out. And if you really like the video, subscribe and watch more of my videos in the future. And if you can, let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. You know, it means a lot to me hearing from my audience. So let's just get into this. Now, the first book that I finished of October 2025 is The World According to Garp by John Irving. This is my first John Irving book, and this was pretty interesting. This came out in 1976, and this is a book with a lot of comedy in it. Garp is T.H. Garp is a very interesting character, but the really interesting characters are the people surrounding Garp. His mother is a person that writes an autobiography, and her autobiography sells really well, and she turns into the leader of the feminist movement. And you meet a lot of feminists in this book. Some of them are not the best people in the world, but there's like a character in this book, Roberta Muldoon, and this is a guy that was a football player that actually has a sex change, and he becomes a female, Roberta Muldoon, and she's a really wonderful character in this book. I really love reading about her. There's a lot of comedy in this book, and it's very unique. There's a lot of sexual material in this book. As a matter of fact, there's sexual assaults in this book described explicitly. So this is not for younger viewers, in my opinion. Although it's funny, there's an epilogue to where John Irving talks about he let his 12-year-old son, one of them, read this book. So he thought it was inappropriate. I think that the situations in this book, you know, are not appropriate for young people. But at the same time, there's a lot of comedy that a child could relate to. But yeah, T.H. Garp is actually an author in this book, and you actually get to read some of his work in this story. So, like, you know what I mean? That one of his stories has a lot of sexual assault in this book, and it's pretty explicit. And it actually makes him really popular by writing this story. I forgot the name of what it was, but yeah, he writes this book, and his mother's biography makes her really popular, and it goes through his life. This has a really tragic ending. A couple tragic things happen in this book. That's really interesting. I really thought this was a wonderful read, and I look forward to reading more John Irving in the future. And check it out if you like it. The World According to Garp. Pretty interesting book. It will bring a laugh or two, I'm pretty sure. Now, the next book that I read was by Neil Gaiman. This is Unfortunately the Milk. Fortunately the Milk, I'm sorry. By Neil Gaiman. Now, this is the second book that I read by Neil Gaiman. And the first book I read was Coraline, and that was an amazing book. I highly recommend Coraline. Coraline is fantastic. From beginning to end, I really loved it, and I love the movie Coraline as well. This I really didn't like at all. This is a book that did not bring me joy. I did like the artwork. The artwork is really great. You know what I mean? There's a lot of great artwork in this, but this is a story where the father of the house goes out to get a gallon of milk or a half a gallon of milk, and he goes on this adventure going to get milk. I think it's just him making up this stuff, just like Neil Gaiman made up this stuff. And it's just like all this stuff. There's vampires in this story. There's dinosaurs in this story, talking dinosaurs that are policemen. There's pirates in this story. There's a time machine in this story. There's all these things in this story, but it's never engrossing. This book never really entertained me because it was just like jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, and it didn't really have a really interesting like hook on it. You know, I was never invested in this story, and yeah, he gets back with the milk, and I really think this is a lot like, and I saw it on Mulberry Street by Dr. Seuss. That's another thing to where everything's just in the imagination. I definitely do not recommend this, but I do recommend Coraline. Although I'm not giving up on Neil Gaiman. I believe he wrote other books that are really good as well. But I don't know. I'm going to check it out. Okay, so that's those two. Now, the next book I read is The Red Badge of Courage. The Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. Unfortunately, the milk... Not unfortunately. I don't know. Every time I think of fortunately, I think of unfortunately. But fortunately, the milk came out in 2013. And The Red Badge of Courage is from 1894. And this is a story set on the battlefield of the Civil War. And you're pretty much on the battlefield. Although at the same time, this was not as tense as it could be. But at the same time, it was a very interesting read. I really enjoyed this a lot. This is a classic. I do highly recommend it. But there was never a time... Like, I read All Quiet on the Western Front, and that was a lot more intense than this. An interesting thing that I did when I read this, I actually used the Cliff Notes with this. So I read a chapter... Then I read a chapter in the Cliff Notes book, and it was an interesting way to read a book, and I really enjoyed it. It made everything crystal clear on what was going on. Now, there are bodies strewn around all over the place, but there's never any like really highly intense scenes. There's battle scenes, but they're never like really intense to where, you know, I'm cringing because I'm reading things, you know, like, oh, damn. But there is an interesting part of this. There's a part to where he's advancing with his regiment, and they're advancing on people, but the regiment retreats, and he retreats with them. Then he gets separated from everybody, so he's walking around for a while, and he's thinking to himself on how shameful he acted, and he doesn't have courage. He's a coward, because he was going, you know, when he first arrived in the army, he's saying, I'm going to show courage. I'm going to have the Red Badge of Courage. But he's walking around feeling like he's got the badge of cowardness. And as he's walking around and seeing dead bodies, he starts being jealous of the dead people, wishing that he was dead because he's going to be shamed. But later on, he winds up not being shamed, and he actually joins in, and everybody's happy to see him. And he actually, you know, joins in. He's a flag carrier, and he actually winds up earning the Red Badge of Courage at the end of this book. This was a very interesting book. I highly recommend it. It's definitely a classic and definitely worth your time if you want to check it out. So the next book I read is a book that I've read once before. This is The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. This came out in 1961. This is a lot like Alice in Wonderland, but it's a little bit differently. This is, what's his name? Milo. Milo is a kid that's really bored with life. He's not really interested in anything. He's kind of a spoiled kid because he's got a car, one of those electric cars that a kid has. And one day, this toll booth shows up in his room in the mail. And then he constructs this toll booth in his room, and he drives through, and when he goes through, he winds up going into another world, kind of like Alice in Wonderland, you know. And once he gets there, he's driving around, and then he actually meets this character right here, the dog. This is Tak, not Tick, Tak. And he's a really interesting character, and he goes on this adventure with Milo. And a little bit later, they want to run into another character, the Humbug, and all three of them are together, and they go on this adventure. Now, he meets the Humbug in a place called Dictionopolis. That's one kingdom, and there's another kingdom, Digitopolis. And Digitopolis and Dictionopolis, they're kind of like, not really at war, but they're not cooperating with each other, and they're kind of against each other. And it causes a lot of problems. So Milo, the Humbug, and Tak go on this adventure to get these characters that will bring everybody together. That's Rhyme and Reason. And they go on this amazing adventure, and it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of use of words in a unique way. See, now this is a children's book, but this isn't for young children. This is for more like 12, 13, maybe 14 years old, you know, literate children, you know, kids that are into reading a lot of books. Then they could read this. If a kid hasn't read a lot of books, this is not a book for them. Give them some Roald Dahl or something. But a kid that's advanced in reading and has a very good vocabulary, they'll like this a lot. This would be a great book for an adult to get 2 copies of this book, and the child and the adult like read it together, and you could teach them some really interesting words from this book. Like there's a character in this book that's a witch, but not a witch like a witch with cast spells, but which way are you going, or which book would you like more? And there's a lot of other things. This is definitely a good book. This is my second time reading it, and I liked it a lot more the second time, although I liked it a lot the first time as well. But I do recommend this. Great book. Okay, so the next book I got right here, this came out in 1993. This is The Giver by Lois Lowry. Now, when I first looked at this book, I thought this was the author. But no, it's not. It's a female, Lois Lowry, that wrote this book. And this book is a lot like Brave New World. This is a very regulated world that these people are in. It really doesn't explain how this world came about, but in this society, everything is regulated. People everybody does the same thing. Everybody, like once you become a 7-year-old, every 7-year-old gets the same things, and everything is regulated really heavily. So this is a lot like a Brave New World. There's no Soma in this story, but everything but the Soma, you know, I mean, it seems like, you know, how they had alphas and everybody was like designed to be something. This is the same type of thing, you know. And the main character, I forgot his name, Jonas. Jonas is enjoying his world, and then he winds up getting assigned to be a giver. And when he's assigned to be a giver, he meets this person right here. This is the character of the giver. And the giver is the only person in this society that has memories. And he has a way of touching somebody. He touched Jonas, and Jonas actually can experience these memories. It's really cool. You know, I mean, this is a very unique book. I really enjoyed it. It's like, yeah, one of the first memories he gets, he actually looks in a snow. He's never seen snow before. He's never been on a sled. He doesn't know what pain is because this society makes sure that everything is safe so you really don't experience pain. And if you do by any chance have an accident or anything, they have this, really potent aspirin they'll give you, and then you don't feel pain anymore. But this guy shares pain with this character, and this character learns a lot about pain. And it's a really fantastic book. The ending is ambiguous, a lot more ambiguous than I would like, but it's a pretty interesting ending. And there's some shocking parts to this. Now, when I read this, I didn't know anything about it. And it was an interesting thing to just read this book. Yeah, and it was very engaging. Definitely a very, very good read. I wish there was one more chapter to explain where Jonas ends at the book, because you really don't know what's going to happen to him. You kind of like can guess what's going to happen to him, but you're not really sure. But yeah, it's a very interesting book. I really liked it. Very unique ending. The ending is a little weird, but I definitely recommend this. And I have other books by Lois Lowry that I'm going to be getting into in the future, but the only one that I've read by her was that one so far. Now, the next book that I finished was Cormac McCarthy. This is The Road, and this is a son and a father that are in a post-apocalyptic world. This is not like the Giver's world. This is like everything is destroyed. There's no grass. There's no animals. It's all ash and everything's burnt down. They really don't explain how it got to like this, but it does a really good job of like describing what these two characters are going through. They're scrounging around trying to get things, and there are other people in this world, but you better watch out for them, because 9 times out of 10 people are starving to death, and when people are very hungry, they're ready to eat each other. So there's some cannibalistic people in this world that you got to watch out for. But they run into a couple of characters that are not cannibals. And there's this one part of this book that they run into an old person. And he was a really interesting character. And then the way this book ends isn't a sad ending. It's actually somewhat of a happy ending. Not like everything's fine again and society's back to normal. But it's got a pretty decent ending. Kind of a sad part, but then it turns into a good part. Now, there's a movie from 2009, I believe it is. This one came out in 2006. So 2009, they made a movie of this. A great experience is to read this book and then watch the movie right after you read this book. And it's because they do a really good job in the movie of what happens in this book. Now, the old person that I was talking about, that is played by Robert Duvall. And I really love Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall is a really amazing actor. Viggo Morrison, I believe, is the main character that plays the father. Therese Thorzine plays the mother. And the mother is not really in this story, but there's flashbacks of her. And yeah, this was a really interesting book. It's very bleak, though. This is definitely not a feel happy book. Some of these parts are very terrifying. There are parts of this book that are pretty scary. Not very scary, but yeah, there's a couple parts of this story that's like kind of creepy. I really liked some of the parts, because I like the creepy parts, but I enjoyed this a lot. This is The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and I've got other books by him that I plan on getting into in the future. Okay, so the next book that I've read 2 short stories in this book right here. This is the Poe Reader, some Edgar Allan Poe. I haven't read any in a while, and I really love Edgar Allan Poe. He's one of my favorite authors. But I read Murders in the Rue Morgue, and then I also read The Mystery of Marie Roget. Murders in the Rue Morgue was from 1841. It's the first detective novel ever, which is short story, because it's really not a novel. But Murders in the Rue Morgue is a story to where there's 2 persons found dead. One of them has their head missing. Well, the head's not missing. The head's detached. And the other person is dead, but shoved up in a chimney, but upside down. And this detective, Dupin, actually gets on this case, and he solves this case, and it's really interesting on who the suspect is, who the murderer is. And I really enjoyed this a lot. It's a lot like a Sherlock Holmes novel, and you could see where Arthur Conan Doyle got the inspirations for Sherlock Holmes, man. Because there's a Watson character. You never get to learn his name. And DuPont is a lot like Sherlock Holmes. I'm glad they came up with Sherlock Holmes because that's a more marketable character, you know. But yeah, it was really interesting. I did. Now, I actually listened to an audiobook about from Murders in the Rue Morgue, and it was really good that I did because there's a lot of French characters in this story, like not the witnesses, but the people that live in the building that they've got to interview, and they all have really heavy French names. So by listening to the audiobook, I really was able to understand the names a little bit. And there's an audiobook, but it's kind of abridged, but it's by Christopher Lee. And that was really interesting, but it's abridged, so it's not the easiest to follow along. But nothing is made up. It's all from the book, but it's like missing parts of the story. So it was really interesting. I love listening to Christopher Lee read. He's definitely got a great voice. And then I read Mystery of Marie Roget, and that is like an unsolved mystery, but it's really interesting on what it is about, man. This is about a body that gets found in the river, and they're talking about like how she floats, and you know what was she with people, and it really doesn't get resolved at the end of the story. But at the same time, Edgar Allan Poe actually based this off of things that happened in real life. You know what I mean? So he's actually trying to solve a murder that actually happened. And this is kind of like his analyze how he analyzed this murder. So it's pretty interesting. I enjoyed it quite a bit, although I was kind of irritating because it doesn't resolve. But yeah, I'm glad because Edgar Allan Poe actually started the detective novel. And detective novels are awesome. Okay, so that's everything that I read in the month of October. Now we're going to go to a little bit in November. That's why this is kind of a long video. Now, the first book that I finished in November was The Shining. Of course, I started this in October, but I finished this in November. This is my second time reading this. This is a really awesome story about a family that goes to this hotel that's in the mountains, and they get isolated, and this is a haunted hotel. And there's an ex-alcoholic that goes there, Jack Torrance, and he winds up snapping, and this is you've probably seen the movie. Nine times out of 10, most people have seen this movie. Some people even read this book. This is a great ghost story because it really is. It's if you watch The Shining by Stanley Kubrick, it really doesn't seem like that much of a ghost story. But if you read this, it's definitely Jack Torrance is definitely influenced by ghosts, and they use Jack Torrance as to be dangerous. You know, they actually use his character. They actually make him think that he's drinking liquor, and he actually goes crazy. And this is a wonderful story. Right now I'm reading the sequel to this, Doctor Sleep. It's pretty interesting so far, and I highly recommend this. This definitely is a scary book. It's definitely got some really, really creepy parts to it, and I really, really, really like this a lot, man. The Shining was wonderful. You should definitely check that out. So the next, and that was in 1977. Imagine that. You get The Shining and then you get Star Wars. You gotta love it, right? So the next book that I'm going to talk about is this book right here. You know, I've read, this has White Fang. This also has The Call of the Wild. This also has Love of Life. And this also has a story called Bastard. And this is Jack London. Now, the ones I read in November was Bastard. Bastard is a story about kind of a bad guy, evil spirited person that adopts this dog. This dog is kind of mean in the beginning, but because he gets adopted by this person, he turns this dog into a vicious animal. These two beings live together, but they kind of hate each other at the same time. And Bastard one time actually, now I forgot his name, Lacrosse, or it's a French name, wouldn't just kill him. He doesn't want to shoot him, but he wants to fight with him and abuse him. So instead of just taking a gun and just shooting this dog, he abuses this dog, and this dog gets to the point where he wants to kill the Frenchman, the Cross, I think. I forget his name, but the Frenchman and the dog, they try to kill each other. The dog even tries it one time, but he fails and kind of really suffers for doing it. And then at the very end of the story, there's something that happens that's very unique. I really don't want to give it away, but it's very interesting on how it ends, and it's got a great ending. It was a short story that came out in 1904. Jack London is a really amazing author, and I really, really enjoyed it a lot. Really wonderful. You should check it out if and it's a short story. It's like 9 pages long, and it's definitely satisfying. A great 9-page story. And then the next thing that I read was The Call of the Wild. Now, The Call of the Wild is an amazing book. This is a story about a dog that's living a very comfortable life on an estate that's a very big estate. Everybody loves him. But there's a carpenter's assistant that has a lot of gambling debts, so he actually kidnaps this dog and sells him. And then this dog, Buck, actually goes on all these adventures by him being sold. And the first person he gets in contact with is this guy in a red sweater. You never really know his name, but he's known as the guy in the red sweater. And this guy kind of breaks Buck. But at the same time, Buck learns a lot from this experience. And then him and another dog get sold to a group of people that are people that do dog sleds in the snowy wilderness. So they're bobsledding through. They're like a dog train in the snow. And I don't think it's Antarctica, or I think it's Alaska maybe. But they go far north, and he gets on this thing. Now the dog Curly, something happens to Curly that is another lesson for Buck. Buck actually sees something happen, and he learns how things are, and it really changes him. And Buck is a really, really strong dog, man. This dog definitely is a survivor. Then he goes from those people to other people. He gets on this mail train, and it's really rough, and it's exhausting, and the dogs are just like really at the end of their strength, man. They're all exhausted. Dogs are dying on this trek, but Buck's actually really strong, but it really, really breaks him down. And then he gets owned by some people that really don't know what they're doing, and by them not knowing what they're doing, that makes it really hard on Buck. And then there's this character, one of the best characters in this book. Now, this is John Thornton. Now, if John Thornton would have adopted Bastard would have turned into a wonderful dog, because John Thornton is a really good person for dogs. He knows how to treat dogs well, and I really love John Thornton as a character. And then there's some other things that happen. I really don't want to give away the ending. The ending is like really surprising. And then the very end of this movie, this book is really surprising as well. And it's really cool. I love the way it ends. It's not a book that's going to leave you sad. But near the end of this book, there's some, and talking about the Red Badge of Courage, this book was way more intense than Red Badge of Courage. And you'd think Red Badge of Courage would be more intense than this. But yeah, Call of the Wild is a book that never is boring. It's one of my favorite books. I enjoyed it so much more the second time around, although I enjoyed it a lot the first time around. And then, of course, I've read White Fang. That's another story. That is a great book as well. Before I go, I just want to say the beginning of White Fang, the first 3 chapters, is horrifying. I mean, if you want a really horrifying experience, the first 3 chapters of White Fang is just... imagine being a person that has no gun, no ammo, and you're in the wilderness being surrounded by wolves, and the wolves are slowly eating the dogs. You know, you wake every morning, you wake up, you start off with 7, then you got 6, then you got 5, and the wolves are closing in, and oh my God. Call of the Wild and White Fang are amazing. Now, I finished this book, and this book, by having both those stories in it, is absolutely amazing. This is definitely going to be on my list of my top favorite books of all time, because both these books, you got Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Both those books are awesome as well. These 2 companion books are just amazing, and I highly recommend reading both. So that's about it. This has been a long video. Sorry this is a little bit too long, but I want to thank you for being here. It means a lot that you're giving me your time, and that's about it. I'm Peter the Book Lover. Please do all that wonderful stuff like subscribing and stuff, and I will see you in the next video. See you next time.